Hey everybody, I'm Nick in the States, and what I wanted to do is do a good video kind of highlighting the facts as we know it, and some of the details for the CITES, or CITES, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, new rulings governing rosewood import and export globally. There's a lot of videos out, some of which have a bunch of information, some of which are kind of a mixed bag of conjecture and stuff. I spent the last few days really researching deeply after one of my favorite vendors, Thomann, started to cease temporarily exporting of rosewood-based guitars. And so we're going to go over the video. It has multiple parts. So there's basically the overall facts, kind of the germane details of why this affects the guitar industry. More into then a section on why. Why are the regulations even here? What's going on? Why is this causing us so much challenges? Is it worth it? And then the final thing is some conjecture, and that's the one section that isn't fact, on what this might mean for especially the inexpensive guitar industry. So anyway, getting started. I say CITES, C-I-T-E-S, does stand for the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. If you followed vintage guitars, maybe you're familiar with Brazilian rosewood and how that's now so rare. It's because it actually was banned. I think there might still be some legal harvesting in small amounts, but CITES is actually the organization that limited Brazilian rosewood. So now, in this case, the new ban on rosewood and on bubinga species, certain ones, affects only import and exported stuff. So anything that's getting shipped across lines and having to be checked by customs. Your guitar is affected by this for this specific reason if it has any rosewood parts, whether that's the fretboard, whether that's even the skunk stripe or the dots on the neck. It's supposed to be subject to this. And your large vendors that are worried about being sued or being completely compliant, legit, above the board, won't ship any of these things across lines unless they're properly certified. Unlike Brazilian rosewood, from what I understand, which has really strict things even with carrying it, I know professional musicians oftentimes now will leave their Brazilian rosewood instruments back home, or Joe Bonamassa being one of the guys that's famous for borrowing the Beast when he's in Europe, and then when he comes back over, he's got his old 58s and 59s. Unlike that, with regular rosewood, you can travel with up to 10 kilograms or 22 pounds of rosewood with you without getting hassled, which is a good thing. But shipping it across customs borders has a whole different impact. As I said, this affects all of the different species of rosewood under the Dalbergia species, along with 3 different types of bubinga. There'll be links below. You can kind of get clarification on those. It's like 300 total species. Now, one of the things that people have gotten really concerned about is it's the end of rosewood availability. No, it isn't. It just means it's the end of rosewood going into things that can cross state lines that hasn't been compliant with how it was harvested, where it was harvested from, and in what amount. And that's really the key thing there. There still will be new rosewood. It's just going to come in more under closer guidelines. We'll also go into where's all this rosewood going in the why section. Now here's the deal. For a manufacturer, they need the CITES certificate on all guitars made outside the borders. So for example, like Gibson with their Epiphone brand. All the Epiphones coming in from China or wherever have to all be certified coming out of China into the US. And then if they're going to export them again, or one of their vendors, musicians, friends, Zounds, whoever, is going to then sell that outside the country, they'll have to get a CITES certificate in the States to then be able to ship that thing to export it. Same with like me. I buy any guitar with a rosewood fretboard in the States, and a lovely person in Canada wants to buy it from me. I have to then go and get it certified before I can ship it across boundaries into Canada. Even though they're really our neighbor to the north and we love them, it's technically another country, legitimately, and things have to go through customs there. Now, these are purchasable certificates. They're not zero cost. For a U.S. manufacturer or dealer, they can actually for $200 get a 3-year kind of blanket thing that allows them to get certificates then at $5 a piece. Certificates only last 6 months, so some people are like, go register all your stuff in case you ever want to sell it. Sure, but you'll have to keep registering every 6 months for that gear. So you kind of have to make your own decisions there. Very important here. This does not affect sales from in the EU to in the EU because you're one trade block. So you can buy something from Thomann in Germany and ship it to the UK for now, or to any other EU member countries. And it doesn't affect the sales there, which is actually great. Same in the States. Like if I want to ship something from Massachusetts to California or Texas or something like that, I have nothing to worry about. Nobody's going to come in and audit all your guitars. It's one of the fears that you see a lot. There's a lot of fear mongering or just natural human reaction to like, oh God, I have so much Rosewood guitars, they're all going to be worthless. No, it's just if it traverses borders. Now, every country manages compliance to this differently. So if you're in the United States, for example, and I want to export a guitar for sale, what I actually have to do is go to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and that's where I can fill out the paperwork, decide to buy a one-off one. A single guitar one-timer is $100. I know in like Germany, I think it's 70 euro. Or if I think I'm going to do a lot, I can spend $200. That gives me a blanket for 3 years, as I said before, but then it's $5 per guitar. And the U.S., they say they're going to get back to you in 60 to 90 days. I know that, for example, Thomann is claiming about 3 weeks for them to get guitar certified coming out of in Germany. So every country handles this differently. There's a link down below for where to start and figure out what the rules are in your particular country. The last thing, and this is still a fact, everybody is unsure of how customs, especially like in the US, is going to keep up with this huge increase in requirements. If you think of how many guitars are imported and exported every day, how many people would it take to open it up, look at it, figure out if it has a certificate or not, look at it to see if it looks like it has rosewood? That's a huge thing. So it's an unknown today on how avidly this will be enforced, but you can definitely understand why companies like Thomann or Guitar Center or Stratosphere or any of the other companies, I think Warmouth, these companies have to cover their tracks, right? They have to follow the letter of the law because they open themselves as a large company to being sued, to being fined, to being found in complete violation of this when they should know. The interesting fact there will be how small sellers react, and we'll talk about that later in the forward-looking speculation section. So we've covered the details, a lot of the plain construct of what this means for today. If you are a vendor who has sitting on pre-ban or pre-regulation stock, you can file and you get grandfathered in on that stuff, but you still have to pay just like everything else, and it's about the same price as paying to get a new guitar post-ban, making sure it goes through. And the post-ban stuff that's made in the Far East, basically it has to have a certificate through each of the jumps that it's made from, say, China to the States, and then maybe the States to Canada or wherever, to cover the paperwork there. Now, why are they doing this to us poor, honest guitarists that just want inexpensive guitars, or any guitars with rosewood, is that? Well, the short answer is there's been huge overforesting of rosewood forests in Vietnam, Thailand, and other countries. It's kind of referred to as the ivory of the forest. And part of the reason for this is there's a huge demand for rosewood furniture in the Chinese market. That intricately carved type of furniture and all that kind of stuff is usually rosewood. And that's resulted in a lot of illegal harvesting and cutting down and selling and moving vast quantities of rosewood without any regulation. So guitars and even gun stock makers are kind of a very small portion of a larger rosewood marketplace. And unfortunately, we're getting dragged into the challenges that marketplace has created. Another thing that's been a challenge, at least of late, is this was improved September and October of 2016. And there's very little time for big companies to prepare, especially in the middle of the holiday season. So you're seeing a little bit of fumbling right now as companies are figuring out exactly what they're doing and adjusting. And also there was some thought that this might get pushed back into later the year to give customs and all the agencies time to figure out the bureaucracy of how to enforce this and monitor it. And then to everyone's, or to many people's surprise, I should say, it didn't get pushed back. So it got put in, and now everyone's kind of adjusting their stuff.